Hey everybody, it's Rob again. It's time for another member talk, and today's topic is Resomation America. We've got Nicki Mikolai. She is the sales manager from Resomation America, and she's going to come on board with us today and tell us all about what Resomation is, alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation, whatever you want to call it. Hey Nicki, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So you are currently you're at home. You're working from home.
I am working from home, as many are.
Is that now? I know Resomation America is in Minnesota. I'm assuming that's where I'm talking to you at, Minnesota.
Yes, yep. I am based out of Minneapolis. This is where our U.S. office is. And our company is actually based in England, over in Leeds. So this is home central here in the U.S.
Wow. So, normally people come on, we do a little question and answer and kind of talk back and forth, but you've got a great product there and you want to tell us about it. And I really am interested to hear about it. We're brand new to aquamation, water cremation, again, all the different terms.
Flameless cremation, right? Yes,
there's
so
tons
many names.
of them.
Yeah.
So I guess
confusing.
Resomation is your company, and you guys refer to this process as Resomation.
Yes. So it is a noun and a verb. You are correct. Resomation Ltd. is our parent company, and then Resomation America is our U.S. subsidiary. So I handle North and South America. But it is, when speaking to the public, we found that calling it water cremation is usually the easiest, even though people still can't wrap their head around water cremation. They do fire, and that goes completely against water. And so how does all of it work? But yeah, we do refer to the process as resomation, but really nobody knows what that is. So our little subline is natural water cremation.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know a lot about it. I do know that Washington State recently passed a law that has now allowed for resomation, water cremation, as a form of legal disposition in the state of Washington.
Correct.
And so I wanted you guys to come on and tell us more about this process. Now, we're going to be posting this on our YouTube page, and I highly recommend that after you hear this on a podcast that you come watch it on YouTube, because we're going to do a screen share right now, and we're going to be able to see everything you're talking about. So I'm just going to kind of sit back, give you the screen, Nicki,
awesome.
And take it away. Tell us all about
it. Great. So I will just kind of do, high level and, what is it, and go from there, kind of just give you the overview. But I've got some great photos and things. I know a lot of people want to see, what does the machine look like? What do the bones look like coming out? So I'm going to share all those things. So again, I definitely encourage your listeners to become viewers. So basically, one of the things that's most exciting about having a new offering of alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation, is that really this is the first choice that the public is going to get now or the first new choice in over 150 years. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would ask, well, why do we need it? I think most of us realize that flame cremation is not necessarily good for our environment, nor is burial. And so people are looking for better options for the environment. Flame cremation releases harmful airborne emissions, large amounts of gas. There's a huge carbon footprint due to the high levels of carbon dioxide. And what we're seeing is that just even in areas around the world, especially in Europe, there are so many government restrictions on new crematories going in that we need to look for another option. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, many people are choosing cremation because they don't like the idea of put in the ground, right? Don't put me in there with the worm. I don't want to be in a box. But honestly, they don't necessarily love the element of fire either. So they have little choice. Now, just quickly, I just want to talk about what's happened in the world over the last 100 years. You can see here that the world population has gone from about 1.8 billion to about 7.5 billion people in the last 100 years. And so when we look at what this has done to the amount of carbon dioxide, right, there's been a 44% increase. And so that is kind of wreaking havoc on our environment. And I know now too, with the wildfires in California and Oregon, more and more people are talking about global warming and what's happening to our environment. And so obviously, we need to do our part to contribute to cutting down that carbon dioxide. So there is a Dutch company called TNO. I can't even tell you what it stands for because it's in Dutch, but they did a research project for Resomation back in 2014, and they looked at the carbon footprint from flame cremation, and then they were able to compare it to Resomation. And what you'll see here is the amount of carbon dioxide that is released into the air with flame cremation versus Resomation. And so you can see here there is a significant difference. And for those who are looking at this and think that I don't know how to spell, the TONNES is actually a metric volume. Being that our company is based in England, at first when I saw this, I was like, "There's so many misspellings in this," and they were like, "Hey, no, you need to learn a little bit about how this is measured." So if we were to switch to water versus flame, it saves us about 237 tons of carbon dioxide every year, which is the equivalent of about 52,000 cars. So it's huge. So what water cremation is really a gentler and more natural end of life option. And so essentially what you're doing is that instead of using flame, you're using water to return the body to another form of cremated remains, but you're using water instead of flame. So what happens, how this process works is, and this is how I explain it to people. So as funeral directors, they are going to understand, how flame cremation works. But just to the average Joe, I explain it that if you were to have a body and dig a hole in the ground and place the body in it, cover it up, the way that it would naturally decompose over time, and that could be, months or years, depending on the environment. Alkaline hydrolysis is essentially the same process. It's just sped up over time. So the environment uses water and bacteria in the soil. We use that same chemistry, but we use 95% water, and then we use 5% of potassium hydroxide, which is a base, and under 302 degrees Fahrenheit and under high pressure, that it speeds up the natural decomposition. So you have the same effect in the matter of about 4 hours, and you get the same result. You end up with cremated remains and with ash, which a lot of people don't realize, and I'll show that in a future slide. But if we can kind of go back to our chemistry days of high school, I've got a junior in high school who's in chemistry right now, and if you think about your pH scale, right, it goes from 1 to 14. And 1 would be vinegar. So that would be an extreme acid. Just regular old water is a 7. So that's very neutral. And then our alkali, which is a base, our potassium hydroxide is a base. So it's a 14. I hear a lot of people say, "Are you putting bodies in acid?" This sounds like an episode of Breaking Bad, right? So I want people to realize that this is not an acid. It is not an acid at all. It is the complete opposite end of this pH scale. So that it seems to put some people at ease to know that we're not putting bodies in a 5-gallon drum of acid like Breaking Bad. Great show. I highly recommend the show. But so, what do we use this potassium hydroxide for? Well, it's in so many everyday applications. It goes into our soaps and shampoos. cosmetics. It's used to control the pH of drinking water, and it's often used in to control the pH of agricultural land. And we also find it in our food, in everything from ice cream to the softening of olives. So if you think about it that way, it really is a safe chemical. I mean, everything in moderation, right? Even water can be dangerous for humans in high volumes. So what happens, you know, basically if we go back kind of to the basics, is that the body is made up of 4 main materials, right? So we've got all the large molecules. We've got fat and protein, our genetic material, so our DNA, carbs, and then we have water. And what happens is, you know, with nature's creation of life, it takes all of those building blocks and, you know, it removes the water, so it uses dehydration to form the body. So you've got all of those things built up together, and we become the living, human, breathing specimens that we are today. So we live our long, happy lives, and then when we die, what we do with alkaline hydrolysis is we essentially kind of disassemble those building blocks. So we add water and we basically unzip them, and then what you're left with at the end is the building blocks as we started with. So it's soap, sugar, nucleotides, amino acids, and water. So that's what you find in the effluent as well. So when people ask, you know, what's in the water that's left over, we hear a lot of comments of, you know, is it gross? Is grandma going down the drain? Am I just going to see a kidney? And really, it is a completely 100% sterile, you know, free of DNA liquid. And I do have a photo coming up as well. Some of the benefits, I mean, I can honestly tell you, for as long as I have been studying this and working with this, I really have not found a reason to not offer alkaline hydrolysis. I can't find a reason why this is not of a benefit to people. There's absolutely no mercury or any harmful airborne emissions. It uses up to 7 times less energy than flame cremation. The carbon footprint is reduced by up to 7 times. Again, that same Dutch group, the TNO, they did a study of 18 different environmental categories, and then they looked at the effects on burial and flame and water cremation. And so they compared all of those, and the impact of water cremation was actually close to 0. And then if you look at the calculated cost of the impact, water cremation is shown to be 17 times less than flame. Not to mention, it's also seen as a lot more gentle by the public. So this is just a great visual, I think, of the environmental impact cost. So again, this would be the cost, you know, dollar-wise on the environment. You can see what burial is compared to flame, compared to water. So just looking at that, you just see such a huge significance. Now, our Resomator is already being used here in the US and being adopted more and more. There are only 20 states currently that offer alkaline hydrolysis as an end-of-life option, obviously yours being one of them, which is fantastic. And we do have a system that is actually being commissioned, and the operators are being trained as we speak. So that is very exciting. It was supposed to happen a couple months ago, but we can thank COVID for many things, and the slowdown of this as well. So here's just a quick visual of the process. So the body goes from the Resomator. The bones will go to a drying oven. Once the bones are dry, they'll go to a bone processor, same as flame cremation. And then they will go into an urn to be returned to the family. So if I break that down for you, this is an example of a body being placed into our chamber. This is Jason Bradshaw. He uses our system here actually in Minnesota. He was only the 2nd funeral director in the United States to offer alkaline hydrolysis, and then he has our system. So little side note, my grandfather actually went into this system as well. So before I even for this company, I chose alkaline hydrolysis for my own family. My grandpa wanted to be cremated, and the more and more I learned about this and learned from Jason Bradshaw, I just realized like this is just such a great option. So the one thing I want to point out though, that is really of note in this photo is that you'll see that this body is covered. Typically the body is wrapped in a bioplastic. So this isn't a body bag. The body does need to be wrapped in some type of container, and that's per the state law, and each state has its own regulations. But for the process of resomation, only materials like silk, wool, and leather can actually go into the chamber. So this is actually a silk shroud that has been specially designed with silk thread. So say if a body was placed wearing like a hospital gown, for example, made of cotton, when that body was done processing, when you opened the door and you pulled out the bones, that hospital gown would remain intact. So really? You have to be really careful not to have any cotton as far as like packing materials, anything that was used for sutures from the ME's office, et cetera. So I just wanted to point that out because I think some people might think that that was, some special type of a body bag, but families can choose this, right, as a silk shroud, which is great for viewing. Otherwise, there is a bioplastic that can be purchased, right, to also prevent from any leaking, those kind of things. Excuse me. This is what the bones look like after process. So when the door is opened and that tray is pulled out, this is exactly what you see, which is so different than flame cremation. You can see part of the skull, the long bones, the femur, the humerus. If you look closely, you can even see there's part of the mandible with some of the teeth. I just find this fascinating because this is just not what you see when you pull a body out of a flame crematory. So these bones are wet. So at this point, everything right now is completely sterile. So you don't even have to wear gloves at this point. Typically people do, but it's hard to kind of wrap your head around that everything right now is 100% sterile. There is nothing, no DNA, no tissue at all left over on these remains at the end of our process. And so these bones, they're picked up then by hand and put into a basket that I will show you. And some of these bones, as you can see, are really large, but they're so brittle that you can actually just break that femur in half. These bones are really easy to kind of snap into smaller pieces to put into the basket. So now this is an example. Our system comes with a bone drying oven. So you get 2 of these baskets. So you can see there that you're able to just put all of the bones and the bone fragments into this basket, and then they go into the oven. And they do need to dry for about 2 hours. From there, they go in. So like I had said before, this is just a regular processor. So you don't need any type of special processor. I know we've had this question before. People already have a flame crematory and they already have their processor. Do they have to buy anything special? The answer is no. There is more dust along with our process, and so I know there's been some recommendations, for some companies that really specialize and have more like dust controlled processors. So I don't need to go into all that on this talk, but you can pulverize these in like 20 seconds and have your cremated remains. So this is what it looks like when you're done. Dare I say, they almost look beautiful. It looks like flour or like hell. Not all people, appreciate that comment, but I think funeral directors can take it. But I just think that looks so much more beautiful than what you typically see. And then you also get about 30% more cremated remains from our process than you do from flame cremation. And that is because our process is actually more gentle to the bone so that there is more left to process. Okay. A common funeral director question too that I get is, well, what do you do about urns then? Do you need bigger urns? Will they fit? 80% of bodies are going to fit into a standard urn. There could be some, large men who are, big boned, those kind of things that may need a larger urn, and they do make larger urns. I also say, I think this is a great opportunity for keepsakes, right? You put everything into a big urn, and then you have an opportunity to, have all the family take a keepsake size urn, or maybe you want to bury some, keep some, scatter some. So there's ways around all of these things. So one of the places that our system has been used for a number of years is at the UCLA School of Medicine, their body donation program. And this is a picture of our system there. They installed it in March of 2012, and they are well over 1,300 successful processes. This is a picture of Dean Fisher. He actually started here in Minnesota at Mayo. He's a licensed funeral director, worked at Mayo, and then he was key in actually getting alkaline hydrolysis legal here in Minnesota because Mayo wanted to start using it. Because they do not need to return their cremated remains to families, they don't have like the drying time aspect of it. So you'll see they just put their bones in these buckets, and then they put them on racks, and they just let them air dry. So the bones will dry in the air naturally in about 4 to 5 hours, and then they're processed. And then about twice a year, he will go out with one of the funeral directors on the coast, and then they're actually scattered at sea. So families, and each body donation program is a little bit different, but so for UCLA, that is how they handle it. Now, this next is what I just think is an awesome video that Dean did, and he will show some of the things that can be pulled out or that he has found actually in our process. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to this video.
So we've talked to you about how the water can be recycled, and we've talked to you about how the ash can be processed and be recycled and given back to the family. Now I want to talk to you about the prosthetics and how the prosthetics can be recycled. Many of you don't realize, but doctors and dentists, they put a lot of different prosthetics into our bodies during our lifetime. As we continue to live older, a lot of us need hip implants, knee implants, a lot of us elect elective surgeries where we have breast implants, Botox, these types of things. We can leave defibrillators and pacemakers right inside the body. These both have batteries in them, and if they were in a flame crematory, those batteries would explode. If they're in the ground, they're going to end up in the groundwater. So once again, these can be saved, these can be sent back to the company for recycling. So that's a great attribute. As you can see, all of these different products here. As you can also see, this has gone through the machine and the battery still works on it. You just heard it go off as we were talking right there. You can see methyl methacrylate from bone cement here. You can see all of the polycarbons that are here. All of these smaller metals, they would all be burned up or they would all end up in the ground. Silicone would end up in the ground or would end up stuck to the crematory floor. So all these types of things add more to our carbon footprint, and with this process and this technology, they can all be saved and they don't go into the ground at all. So we're very grateful for all this. We also see like very small metals that you wouldn't see, that are different types of small plates and screws that are in people's bodies. All of this stuff would either end up in our groundwater or it would end up in our atmosphere because it would be burned up. So this is another attribute of this great process that I'm talking about here.
It's just so cool. I've seen that video so many times and it just never gets old. I just love looking at all of the things that Dean has pulled out from bodies over the years. So here is a side-by-side example of what the metals look like when they've come out from a retort versus what they look like when they come out. And honestly, I mean, and then the fact that they're completely sterile, I mean, they look like the day that they were implanted into some of these bodies. So one thing that I did not realize, until I really got involved, even though I'm a funeral director, I didn't know the metal recycling side of cremation and everything that was left over.
Right.
And I have realized, right, like there's a lot of money in this metal recycling. And with our process, because there is so much more metal that comes out, even the small pieces, this just adds up. So some of our users are actually seeing really big checks from these metal recycling companies. So Dean Fisher, he actually at UCLA, they put that money towards a huge memorial service every year for all the donor families. I know a lot of funeral homes will donate it to charities or whatever, but you know, it's easily something that could go back into the cost of your business as well. And I know we at Resomation would love to see someday, instead of all of this going back and being melted down, like couldn't it somehow be shipped to other countries, right, to bring down the cost of some of these, some of this healthcare and the components and things like that. So, you know, we like to dream big about, you know, what could all come from this, but I just think it's really fascinating to see what's coming back versus into the atmosphere, like Dean said, into the ground. So I showed you pictures of the ash. This is a huge, this visual, I think, for people is huge. The effluent or the bio liquid, right? The water that's left over, whatever we want to call it. I have read articles and editorials and heard people speak that have referred to this as, you know, soupy or sludge. And I think, wow, it is no wonder people don't want this, right? They have such a terrible image of what's being sent down the drain. So this is what the effluent looks like from our system, from our process. And as you can see, it is not a soupy, sludgy mess. I will explain to people that, you know, it kind of looks like tea or, you know, dare I say bourbon, right? Whatever pick your poison, but some people want to think of that as bourbon, but it is completely sterile. It's free of DNA. It's a water-like consistency. And so what happens is when the process is over, when the water drains from the resomator, it goes into a water treatment tank. And this is a tank that's part of our system. And the effluent is treated with a sulfuric acid, which brings down the pH to make it safe to go to the drain. So for example, here, you know, the water authority may say that the water has to be between a pH of 10 and 11. Well, it's about a 13 when it comes out of the machine. So there's an automatic addition of sulfuric acid. The pH is lowered, the temperature cools, and then it automatically, once it's safe, there's a sensor that opens the valve and then it can go down to drain. And I mean, it goes to the water treatment facility like any other water. So completely safe.
And that's all part of the unit itself, you said? I'm sorry.
It's part of our system, yep. And so I'll show you, I've got some other pictures of, right, because it's not just the resomator itself, right? There's other components that go to our sister system. So I do have some images of that, but the water treatment tank is a part of it. So I'd say maybe the one negative that people think about is the amount of water being used, right? Like that would be detrimental to our environment is the amount of water. So our process uses about 396 gallons of water. And so people will say, you know, isn't that a lot? And really our answer is no, because this water is never lost. I mean, it goes, right? I mean, it's treated and then it returns to the water cycle. And then, you know, to rain, you know, et cetera. And so the average family uses about 400 gallons of water a day. So one cycle is typical to the average family of 4. Now, some little fun facts, I think, is that, I mean, every single one of us owns a pair of jeans. Now, we may not have been wearing them at COVID because sweatpants are king, but for a pair of jeans, 1,800 gallons of water is used in the production of one pair of jeans. And that goes from everything of like, you know, watering the cotton seed, right? But by the end, by the time you buy that pair of jeans, 1,800 gallons has been used. So a t-shirt, 650 gallons, 53 gallons for an egg. My favorite though, is that 37 gallons of water goes into every cup of coffee. So really by 8 a.m. every day, right, I've already used 74 gallons in my 2 cups of coffee. So I just think it helps to kind of put this back into perspective of, how much water are we talking about? So quick couple of visuals on the water cycle, right? I mean, it rains, we've got precipitation, it goes to the ground, it ends up in the lakes, streams, river, ocean, it evaporates, and then it rains, right? So we've got this little kind of water cycle of life. In the cemetery, this is kind of what we see happening, right? We've got the runoff into the groundwater, which ends up in the crematory, right? Even with, because our bodies are made up of, 60, 65% water, even in the cremation process, right? There's water that's being released into the air, which is coming back through. And so again, with our process, this water that's left over afterwards gets treated and ends up back in our system. So really, this water is not wasted as one might picture. So this is a map actually that we took from Cana. And so this is an older map, and it was really hard to kind of juggle around and try to change these colors. So forgive me that British Columbia, I could not get it to be green, so we just had to put a green star on it. So it just shows here that we've got 4 Canadian provinces and now 20 legal states. When this map was produced, Texas was under consideration, like it was in legislation, and unfortunately it failed. So that's a whole other story, but we're trying to work with them and get people educated on what this is. But you can see, right, like that the state of Washington is so fortunate to be one of the green that they can offer this. Lots of potential customers who want this process so badly, but they're in a state that is not yet legal. So just to give you just a couple visuals of installation. So this is another view of that system at Bradshaw, not far from me, over in St. Paul, Minnesota. And so he actually, when he put this in, he really went all in. And so what we're looking at right now is essentially if we're standing in a viewing room and we are looking through glass at the resonator. And so on the other side, there are 2 doors that would close off. So a family could actually stand and witness a body be placed in for viewing. But what he has found is that over the last 8 years since he's put in his system is that like between 70 and 80%, so 75% of families, when they have been offered the choice between flame or water, they're choosing water. And what they thought is that people would choose it because it's better for the environment. And what they've actually found is that people are choosing it because it's seen as more gentle, right? I mean, when we picture fire and flames, there's nothing gentle about that, right? It's really destructive. But when we think about water, we think about our pools or hot tubs or oceans, right? I mean, we've got water features and it's calming. And so people like the idea and the perception of that. This is just a different angle of his viewing room. He actually does have a water feature in there with candles. So he's been able to have even small ceremonies in there, some prayer services, etc. Another medical school that uses our process is Mayo Medical School down here in Minnesota, in Rochester. So they actually originally, when they were working on legalizing this, had a competitive unit put into their system. And so they took that out and put our system in. So our system's been there since September 2018. There are well over 550 processes. So they are, I mean, I think it says a lot about this process, right? To know that two major medical schools like Mayo and UCLA are using this and really loving what it's doing for them. So here is a graphic of our tank system. So this is a compact system. So this is the type of a system that you would have for like a single resonator. And what you'll see here is it comes all, put together in a containment tray so that, should there ever be a spill, even though these are double-walled tanks, but it also is contained. So should there be a spill, it would all be contained in this tray. And then there's a control panel on the end. But you'll see the biggest one is the alkali tank. So that's the tank that holds the potassium hydroxide. The neutralizing tank is the sulfuric acid. There's also an energy reclamation tank. And so that is to help kind of conserve some water. So after the system, after the process is done, that water is drained to the treatment tank, which is the tank next to them. And then there is water that is run through the bottom of the system to help cool the coils and cool it off. Well, that water then goes back to the energy reclamation tank and then gets reused for the next process. So it's just another way that we're kind of helping to conserve energy and reuse some of that water. So this is just kind of what it would look like in your building. We also have customers who already know that they're going to need more than one resonator, right? They just know based on their volume that they're going to need more than one. So what they can do when they purchase their first one is they can get this, what we called it's a duplex prepared system. So it's a bigger alkali tank. And then you'll see here, there's actually 2 treatment tanks. So you can be running 2 resonators side by side. Couple images. So these are the real photos. These, this is in our factory over in Leeds. So actual equipment and the tanks. And our system also includes it's funny, so on here, we call it a stainless weighing trolley, and I've already had, an American say, trolley? What's a trolley? Okay, it's a lift, right? It's a lift, but I should probably change the name. But my British friends call it a trolley, so that's how it has to be on here. But so the system works based on the weight of the body. So this trolley, this lift is a part of our system. So the body is weighed while on here. It's then loaded into the resonator, and then the amount of chemical that is added is all automated, and it's based on the weight of the body. So it's super, super simple, easy to use. It's like you put the body in, close the door, enter in the weight, whether or not the body's been embalmed, male or female, and start. And you can come back in 4 hours and open the door, and what you would have is that photo that I showed earlier with with all of the bones. The heat source is a steam generator, and people have their choice. They can either use gas or they can use electric. It's completely up to them. This is also a part of the system. This is what we use to heat that water, and that actually helps to cut down on the process time. I've also included in just a couple examples of, how big are these? What size of a space would I need to put one in? So this would be for our compact system. As I mentioned, the average cycle is about 4 hours. And so this is just a general layout. If anybody wants these diagrams, they can email me. I'm happy to share any of this information. Here is another diagram of a duplex system. So you can see this one's got the 2 resonators side by side. So, because a lot of people just kind of want to know, what kind of square footage would I need? How big of a building? And really, it varies. Tanks don't have to be right next to the resonator. They can be in a completely different room. So there's options. But hopefully that was just a good kind of an overview of how the system works, what this can be doing for all of us in North America and, hopefully around the world as this process gains acceptance. But I'm thrilled for the state of Washington that it's legal. I'm very excited that it's going to be offered there, at least, from one of our customers starting in a couple weeks. But at this point, if you have any questions for me, Rob, I know that we don't have anyone else live on here with us, but I'll switch back. Well, or I suppose I could leave up my email address for a minute here too. If anybody has questions, they can definitely reach out.
Yeah, we can, and we'll say it's Nicki Mikolai, and that's spelled Nicki Mikolai at resomationamerica.com, and we'll add that onto the video as well. I do have a couple questions that had come in when I told people I was going to be talking with you.
Oh, good.
That they had. Some of them you've already answered, so thank you for that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm just going to reference, we'll just have them reference the video. But a couple questions I had for you is, I thought I heard you mention that that the trolley,
Trolley.
the trolley. Let's call it the trolley.
Okay.
You mentioned that it takes the weight, but you determine whether the individual's been embalmed or not. So am I right in saying that if somebody's been embalmed, you can still have resomation?
Yes, you absolutely can. And that is a very common question. And really the only difference is that it's just a little bit more chemical and a little bit more time. But that, like I said, that's all automated. So enter in the weight of the body, and then the system, right? The computer system. It looks like an iPad. I don't know if people saw the picture, but it's just a touch screen. And so when you say yes, that the body's embalmed, the system, the program knows then to add enough extra chemical to work for that.
Okay. And I'm assuming, and this is just my own, I kind of thought this, but I'm assuming you can get it in standard units, not metric units, as far as
yes.
As far as the weight. All right, just checking.
Yes, absolutely. It can be programmed either way.
What are you hearing?
Different languages, right? I mean, we are working with other countries who need it in Spanish, and so all these things are possible.
The states that are not legal currently, what are you hearing coming out of those states? What is the reasoning behind the decision to either not allow this to happen, or just that it hasn't even come up yet in discussion?
Right. Okay. So what I have found, I hear different things. So I will use Wisconsin. So my neighbor, for example, Wisconsin has Minnesota on one side and Illinois on its other side, both legal for alkaline hydrolysis. So it went to the legislation last year, and I think we all kind of thought this would be a slam dunk, right? Now, what I heard is that the reason it didn't pass had nothing to do with what alkaline hydrolysis is or isn't, but with which political party presented it. Right?
One of those.
One of those, right? And so let's just say, that just sucks. It's like, this shouldn't be, like many things these days, right? This shouldn't be a political debate, right? But so, hopefully now, the next time this, it'll go through. I'm not sure. I have heard that there is another state that has really there's a bunch of funeral directors that have been trying to push this forward. And the rumor, right? I'm going to air quote, the rumor is that the governor of this state is Catholic and doesn't believe in it. And so he said, even if it passed, the House and Senate, if it made all its way through, if it ended up on his desk, he would not sign it. Now, there are people from that state that said, that's not true, that's not true. And so a lot of it, I believe, just comes down to, has anybody wanted this and done the work, right? Has anybody sought out, a legislator to kind of, partner up with and do the work to get this presented? Because oftentimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
So don't want to say that it's easy, but it isn't necessarily hard. But that is what I'm finding is the general reason, is that just nobody has wanted to kind of take the initiative.
How long has this been around? How long have we been resomating people?
Okay, so we have been resomating people for about 8-9 years, but they've been using it for animals for many, many, many years. And so there are a lot of like pet water cremation systems that are being used. And in fact, our founder, before he founded Resomation and built his machine, he worked for a company that's what they did. They built systems for pets. And he was the one that kind of said, I don't see any reason why we can't do this for humans. So this has kind of been his dream and his baby. He's a biochemist. And so he founded this company. And I mean, here we are, right? I mean, it really is incredible. But yeah, so I know that in the state of Minnesota, all of the deer that die of oh my gosh, now I'm completely blanking on the disease. Wow.
The deer disease?
I'm having one of those blonde moments. I keep wanting to say mad cow disease, and it's not mad cow, but chronic waste disease. Thank you. I knew it would come eventually. So the deer that die of chronic waste disease are all disposed of through alkaline hydrolysis because it kills the prions.
Okay.
So I'm like, who knew? I had no idea.
That does lead to the next question then. Has this been tested on like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease with the prions, and how does that work there?
That's a great question. So it has not ever been tested, but it follows the same, like when you compare animal testing that's been done for sterilization of surgical instruments, those kind of things, right? That kills the prions. Our system, and Dean Fisher at UCLA actually was a part of this testing, that the sterilization that happens in our system is 60,000 times greater than what surgical instruments are come out at from an autoclave. So it's crazy the amount, right, of sterilization. So it has been shown to kill prions, but like using animals and those kind of things. So the process, but it has actually not been tested on humans.
Is that in the works that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I think that is, I mean, I think that there's a special group that would have to test that, and tons of money and expenses that goes into it. But, you know, to the best of my knowledge, when they compare the process to the testing that's been done on animals and how much greater this process works. And again, right, I mean, I am only specifically speaking for our system. I can't speak for others, but because of the high pressure and the high temperature, that is the result that you're getting.
So my guess is that the question, can somebody that has prion disease, whatever sort, we're saying no at this point, they cannot have this process done for disposition.
So, right, so we have not come across that yet, but what the comparable animal tests have shown is that it does kill the prions. Our process does kill prions. So we're saying yes, it does, right? And UCLA is saying yes, it does. It just hasn't been formally
Not official
on a human. Yes.
Okay. One thing that that I saw in your slide, which I thought was very interesting, was the prosthetics that come out of the process. They look brand new.
Mm-hmm.
People always ask when it comes to cremation, what about the gold teeth? What happens to that? I'm assuming that based off everything else that you had on showing there, that gold teeth come out looking exactly like gold teeth.
Gold teeth. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because teeth come out looking like teeth. It's crazy. And so, to the best of my knowledge, it is based on, I think it's the state. I mean, you're a funeral director there in Washington State, but here in Minnesota, the gold has to be returned to the family. I mean, unless they don't want it back. But I believe that, all the gold from teeth has to be returned to the family. If not, big money in the recycling of that gold.
Yeah, no. One of the things that Washington did just pass, besides the allowing of alkaline hydrolysis or resomation, we now have a license. We're calling it a reduction operator license, excuse me. And essentially what it is you have to have specific training to operate a reduction machine, be it a cremator, a resomator, or what we're calling natural organic reduction. That training can come from the manufacturers. Is that a program that you have that we can be trained on and used so we can have these operator licenses to be able to?
Okay, such a good question. So I know that as part of when we put in a system, when we come out and do kind of all the final, tweaking and commissioning and start running the system right with water, with chemical, and then start adding cadavers, the training of the operators or any staff that's going to be using the system is a part of that, right? We want to make sure that everybody knows how that works. So that, of course, will be part of it. I have also had conversations with Cana because Cana is working on offering the operator credentials for alkaline hydrolysis as well.
Right, good.
So what each state is going to require, right? What's going to be considered, good enough to check the box? That I don't know for sure. But I do know, right, that of course we can count on our good friends at Cana to help us out with that.
Cana's been great. They've been a wonderful feature for us, and I'm on here to talk to you, but I will give Cana a plug because they are a wonderful organization, and they have actually extended a very special offer for our members to go through that reduction class, their crematory operator class. So we've been excited to be a part of them as well.
Yeah. You go ahead and plug Cana on my podcast /Zoom because they're great supporters for alkaline hydrolysis as well. So love me some Cana.
So just a couple more quick questions for you. Noise. Crematories are loud.
Yeah.
This
is not. This is not. These are such great questions. It's like you just did your homework, right? It's not loud at all. And in fact, it's impressive to me, right? I compare it to a dishwasher. But it is, now granted, the dishwashers of old are loud, but this is not old. I can stand right in front of that while it is running and easily carry on a conversation with somebody. Not offensive.
So I do have to kind of confess a little bit. One of our members, actually one of our new members, is a company here in where I'm at in Spokane called Loving Paws. And they do animal resomation.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if they use your brand or one of the others, but
we at this time we don't offer a pet system, so there's just competition there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I asked the noise question because I went down and talked with them down there, talked to Craig, and we actually did one of these talks right there in his office. And after the talk, I said, I got to know, is this thing loud? Because I've worked around enough crematories to know that I've lost some hearing from it.
Right.
They are a loud machine. So he said, come on back, let's take a look. We went back there and I was like, okay, turn it on. He said, it is on.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Literally, the dishwasher idea is pretty similar. I have no idea it's on.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes, right, you can hear like a valve opening or closing, right? There's some things like that, but otherwise not loud at all.
What'd you call it? It was potassium
hydroxide.
Potassium hydroxide. My guess is you probably don't run down to Walgreens and buy a box of that. Where do you get
or
this?
Home Depot. You do not. No, that's not where we're getting it. So, as you saw too, right? We've got the big tanks.
Mm-hmm.
The other really cool thing about this is that since everything is automated, right? Our operators are never handling the chemical, right? So it's all pumped in automatically. And those tanks get filled by chemical companies as well. And so when it's installed, there's actually outside fill points. So you can call a chemical company. I don't know if you have Hawkins Chemical Company. I know there's lots of different chemical companies, but potassium hydroxide is used in so many things too that it's common and easy to find. And so it's in a liquid form. But so what happens is, when the funeral home or crematory is running low, they'll pull up with their truck and they just fill the tank from an outside spot, like from the parking lot. So they never even enter your building. So they fill up, shut it down, drive away.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it just,
something that caught my attention in your video, again, comparing to crematories, because that's what I know. That's what I've been around my whole career.
right.
The floor in your machine, that it looks like it does come out and you place the remains on there and then it rolls back into place, I'm assuming is how that works.
Yep.
Does that have as much issue as a refractory and a crematory where you're constantly having to re-brick that every so often? Or is
Great
that
question.
just something that it's part of the machine and it stays with the machine forever?
Yes, it's part of the machine. It's built. So the inside of the machine, so what you don't see, right? So what you saw in the images is it looks like a big square.
Mm-hmm.
So those panels actually all come off. They're just basically stainless steel panels that kind of hang on the sides to make it look pretty. Right? So if you took it off, you would see that inside is a big pressure vessel. It's just a big tube, if you will, and you can see all the valves and the plumbing and all those kind of things. But that's not necessarily what the public wants to see, right? Or if you are going to have wind in view. So hence it's got the sides on it. But that pressure vessel, it's got a 25-year warranty on it. That thing is built to last. So there isn't any maintenance, if you will, like rebricking. The only thing that really has to be maintained is when you open up the door, there is a rubber seal on the inside of the door that has to be replaced every 30 to 40 cycles. But it's an easy, right, take it off, put it back on, and if you keep it clean and, free of debris, those kind of things, you should get 30 to 40 cycles on it, which, depending on how many processes you're doing, will determine how long it lasts. But yeah, that's a huge benefit to this is you don't have the rebricking.
Nice. Well, that's really all the questions I got.
Good.
And it's all the questions that people have sent me. So awesome. That's been a lot of fun. It's been exciting.
Good.
I would highly recommend, if you're hearing this on our podcast, I'm going to highly recommend you transfer over at least starting Thursday and watch this video on YouTube, especially to see the machine, the unit, and the viewing room. My goodness, that was beautiful. Where was that? You said that was in St. Paul?
Yeah, it's in Stillwater, Minnesota, so it's a suburb of St. Paul. Yeah.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, they little side story about them is that they actually were on the cover of Time magazine. And so they did a feature on them, back when they put that in, and it was really so well done.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, and certainly nice to be in the news, especially on Time magazine, for something good and not something bad.
Right, because that's typically when you hear about anyone in our industry is when something bad goes wrong. But certainly we've got this going into industrial parks too, right? So I would say that it's like the extreme of buildings, right, and what people have done, right, to kind of showcase their machine. But I don't want people to think that is what you have to do in order to have a resonator, because that's not the case.
No, but boy, sure be nice if you did. It's gorgeous.
I know. And we love to take people there too. So if anybody ever wants to come, if they're thinking about this too, we welcome them. Like, come, I'll meet you over there, give you the tour. Jason loves showing off that room and his machine.
Something that just came to mind, and I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but most states, including Washington, use a little metal disc to identify cremated remains. My guess is, based off of the pictures you have shown, that disc can be placed inside the unit, or does that have to stay on the outside and then be put with the resumated remains at the end?
So great question. So it's typically, like, I know at the places where they're using this, it's kept with the paperwork, right? So the paperwork never leaves the body, but it actually isn't put inside with the body. But I mean, it would remain, but it always stays like everywhere that I've seen, right? When they keep the paperwork with that tag, it just moves right along. So same system.
Yeah. Well, Nicki, this has been great. This has really been exciting for me to see this. I'm glad that Washington has moved forward with legalizing this form of disposition. I know that currently, at least as of the time of this recording, there's at least one that's trying very, very difficultly to get opened up. But with the COVID and with the everything else and all the restrictions, it's been a process. But we're wishing them luck, and I'm wishing you guys luck to see you get out here more. And
me too.
Part of the state, I have a feeling that we're going to see more people that are looking to offer this option at their funeral homes.
Yep. You know, so if I can just add one more thing, because I get this question all the time, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer it. Is people often ask too, you know, does it cost more, right? Does it cost more than flame cremation? And I get this question from consumers and funeral directors, you know, crematory operators looking to purchase this. And what I always say is it's up to you, right? Like, we don't set your prices, but the equipment is more expensive than flame, right? So to purchase our system, it's more expensive than to purchase a flame crematory, but the cost per process is less. And I can provide people with all the breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like it's a premium product, and I think people can charge more for it. You know, what that price point is, right? What are people willing to pay? I don't know, right? I mean, I think that will come, right? I mean, it's still a newer technology, but I've certainly found in places, you know, people are willing to pay $500, $1,000 more for water cremations versus flame. And I feel like it's a lot like organic, right? I mean, organic strawberries and non-organic strawberries, they look exactly the same. They have the same clamshell, right? One has chemicals, but people will pay more for their organic if that's important to them. And so I feel if someone wants this, they will pay more for it. So I just, to stop the 7,500 emails of, is it more expensive? I'll just answer that right now, but I'll still take all the emails, bring on all the questions. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. Bring on the emails, because, you know, that's how we learn. That's how we know.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me this time. I'm just very excited about, obviously I love this process, and I'm very excited for Washington.
I was glad you reached out. It's been a lot of fun, and we're going to post your email up here again, and I'm going to encourage you to listen to the podcast. I'm also going to encourage you to jump over to YouTube and watch the video, because there's some really and I'm going to kind of digress just for a second and tell you something that I saw in your video that to me really opened up a door that made more sense. And, you know, we've always talked about the water cycle. You mentioned that, but that simple little diagram that you showed where you had the funeral home in the middle, and burial going down this way into the ground, this way, and, you know, that made more sense. That opened up the door, from my understanding, at least, of, you know, because I kept thinking, how is this supposedly better? How does this work? How are we, you know? But just that little simple cartoon diagram that you had was like,
right. And but I think, and we all kind of learn in different ways, and I think we'll get our aha moments from different things, but well, good.
Awesome. Well, Nicki, thank you for coming on here.
Thank you so much.
Part of it, Resomation America. Love having you guys.
We do have a website too, resomation.com or resomationamerica.com. It'll take you to the same place too if people want to, you know, snoop around the website.
Beautiful. Well, until next time, everybody, we will see you again. And if you have questions, reach out, and Nicki, I'm sure, would be happy to talk with you more.
Very happy.
Bye, everybody.